He'd been coming to the same café for 3 months before he ever learned her name. Morning light always hit the corner table around 9:30, the one beside the window, half shielded by a fern that needed watering. That's where she sat. Always alone. Always with a hardcover book that looked too heavy for how gently she turned the pages. He didn't plan it, but his breaks started to line up with hers. Some days he pretended to scroll through his phone, other days he just let his coffee go cold watching the street reflect in the glass. There was something oddly grounding about her, like the world around her ran slower. When she finally spoke to him, it wasn't a moment. It was a correction. "You're holding the lid wrong," she said, nodding at his cup. "It'll leak." He smiled, adjusting it. "That obvious?" "Only if you've cleaned coffee off your clothes before." Her voice wasn't soft, it had a kind of worn steadiness. The kind people build from years of holding things together. He guessed mid-40s, maybe a little older. She wore no ring. They started sharing the table when the place got crowded. She read, he typed half emails he never sent. Once, he asked what she was reading. She just turned the cover toward him without looking up. "Something I've already read twice." He didn't ask why. He understood. Some mornings she'd remember his order before he reached the counter. "Flat white, no sugar, right?" He nodded. "And you, black, extra hot." She raised a brow. "You remember. I'm observant." She smiled then, the kind that made time feel less lonely for a second too long. Their conversations never lasted. A few lines, a laugh, silence. But the silences began to feel like something too, like both of them were trying not to ask for more. He noticed small things, how she folded her napkin exactly in half before leaving, how her phone stayed face down, how her hands trembled slightly when she reached for her thermos. Sometimes, he wanted to tell her about the emptiness of his apartment or how his friends thought he was quiet weird. But he didn't. He didn't want to disturb the peace between them. Then one morning, she wasn't there. The fern drooped lower than usual. He checked his phone twice, though he didn't know what he was waiting for. When she finally walked in, later than usual, she was in a pale cream dress, hair slightly undone, makeup softer. She looked, unlike herself. Lighter, but also fragile. She caught him staring and smiled, almost apologetically. "Big day?" he asked, before thinking. She hesitated, adjusting the strap of her purse. "Something like that." He wanted to ask more, but she was already glancing at her phone. The screen lit up briefly, he caught the first line of a text before she turned it over. She came back 3 days later. The scarf was still there, folded neatly on the same chair, untouched. He pretended not to notice her hesitate when she saw it. "Guess someone saved me from losing another thing," she said softly, picking it up. He smiled, trying to sound casual. "I figured it didn't deserve the lost and found. You have a good memory." "I forget everything else." She laughed, the kind that doesn't fill a room, just brushes against it. Then she sat down, same seat, same order. Like nothing had shifted. Except everything had. He wanted to ask about the text. About the dress. About the man she might have been marrying. But he didn't. You learn early that some questions only sound gentle, they still bruise when they land. She stirred her coffee though she didn't take sugar. "Do you ever get that feeling," she said suddenly, "that life just skipped a chapter while you weren't looking?" He blinked. "Every day." She looked at him then, really looked. "You're too young to mean that." "Maybe. But I think you'd be surprised." For a moment, the cafe around them went quiet, or maybe they just stopped hearing it. He told her, in pieces, about his job. How he worked nights sometimes, fixing other people's mistakes. How he once almost went to art school but didn't. She listened, chin resting on her hand, the way someone listens to a story they already know the ending to. Then she said, I used to teach art. Years ago. Before, everything got complicated. Do you miss it? Every single day, she said. Then smiled, almost as if apologizing for the honesty. But you get used to missing things. It's like background noise after a while. He noticed how she looked out the window when she said that, not away from him, but toward some version of her life that wasn't this café. Their hands brushed when she reached for her cup. Just a flicker, a mistake. But it sent something quiet and electric through him. She didn't move her hand right away, and he didn't either. After that, conversation got thinner. Lighter things, safer things. She teased him about his habit of overthinking his texts before sending them. He countered by saying she probably rehearsed her silences before speaking. She smiled. He wasn't wrong. When she got up to leave, she paused beside him, scarf draped loosely around her neck now. You know, she said, eyes on her bag, it's strange. I didn't think I'd come back here. I'm glad you did. Don't be, she said quietly. Some things are easier when you don't start again. She reached out as if to steady herself on the edge of the table, fingers barely brushing his sleeve, then withdrew. But the touch lingered longer than it should have. Later, when he closed his laptop and watched her cross the street, he found himself thinking, it started to rain the next week, thin, uncommitted rain that couldn't decide whether to stay or leave. He came to the cafe anyway. She wasn't there. He almost left, but then she walked in, shaking droplets from her hair, coat darkened at the shoulders. Still keeping my seat, she asked, smiling faintly. Someone has to, he said. Then I suppose I should thank you. They sat without much talk. The space between them was quieter than usual, and he couldn't tell if that was comfort or warning. Her phone buzzed once. She looked at it, face unreadable, then flipped it over again. He caught the faintest sigh, not frustration, not sadness, something in between. Long day? He asked. They all are lately. She tried to smile, failed halfway. I've been rearranging things. In my head, mostly. Rearranging? Trying to decide what still fits. He wanted to ask what doesn't, but the look in her eyes stopped him. The barista, a girl his age, waved from the counter. Liam, you working tonight? He nodded, awkward, as her eyes flicked toward the woman beside him. He felt the question hanging there, unsaid but obvious, who's she? When he turned back, the woman was stirring her coffee again, even though it was already mixed. She seems nice, she said lightly. She's just, you don't owe me an explanation, she interrupted, not unkindly. We just talk sometimes. He wanted to tell her it wasn't just that, but what else could it be? The rain grew heavier, streaking the window until the world outside blurred into gray. She glanced at his hands, he realized he'd been tapping his thumb against his cup. Nervous habit. Do you ever feel, she murmured, like you're standing too close to something you shouldn't touch? He looked up, unsure if she meant him. Yeah, he said quietly. All the time. For a while, neither moved. Just the hum of rain and the faint clatter of cups behind the counter. She shifted closer, just enough for her shoulder to brush his. He could smell rain on her coat, faint perfume beneath it, something calm, deliberate, not meant to attract. He wanted to say her name, but the air felt too fragile. Her phone buzzed again. Louder this time. She glanced at it, flinched slightly. He caught a glimpse, we need to talk. Before the ceremony. She turned the phone over, exhaling like she'd been holding her breath for hours. I should go, she said softly. Do you want to? She hesitated. That pause, it said everything. At the door, she looked back. Rain still falling behind her, light catching in her hair. Liam, she said, voice almost breaking on his name. He stood, halfway, not sure what to do. For 1 second, maybe less, she stepped toward him. Close enough that he could feel the warmth of her breath. But then she stopped. A tiny shake of her head. And left. He found her outside the cafe this time, sitting on the curb near the parking lot, coffee in hand, still in that cream scarf. Evening light was folding itself across the street, soft and low, like it was trying not to interrupt. She looked up when he approached. "You're late," she said, though she hadn't asked him to come. "You didn't text," he replied. "I didn't think I should." He sat beside her, close enough to feel the heat radiating from her shoulder. Cars passed now and then, slow, indifferent. They didn't talk for a while. She traced a finger around the lid of her cup, slow, careful, as if she was buying time. He wanted to ask what she was doing there, if she'd gone through with the ceremony. But she looked like someone who'd just come from a place where words didn't help. "I was supposed to be somewhere else today," she said finally. He nodded. "I know." She blinked. "Do you?" He didn't answer. Then, almost as an afterthought, she laughed, soft, tired. "My ex-husband texted me. The one I was supposed to marry again." He turned to her, surprised. She added, "Apparently, there was someone else." "There always is." The air felt heavier suddenly, not from the confession but from the way she said it, not angry, not broken. Just, emptied. "I'm sorry," he said. She shrugged. "Don't be." "I think I was relieved." Her voice cracked on that word, so faintly he might have imagined it. He wanted to reach out, to touch her hand, but she folded her arms before he could. "I don't know what I'm doing," she said, half to herself. "I come here, I talk to you, and it feels," she stopped. Shook her head. "It feels like something I shouldn't need." He stared down at the pavement, tracing a line in the dust with his shoe. "You think I don't feel that too?" he asked. She turned toward him, eyes sharp now, not angry, just cornered. "You're 24, Liam. You still believe you can want something and not ruin it. And you don't." She smiled, small and painful. "I've learned better." For a while, the only sound was the soft clink of her cup against the ground. He could feel something coming, not loud, not dramatic, just inevitable. "I keep thinking," he said, "if I'd met you somewhere else, without all the almosts and shouldn'ts," she cut in gently. "You'd still look at me the same." He met her gaze. "Didn't look away this time." "Yeah," he whispered. "Maybe worse." Her breath caught. Her fingers twitched once, like she almost reached for him but stopped. He didn't move. Neither did she. The sun dipped completely, leaving only the hum of passing cars and the echo of what neither had said. When she finally stood, her voice was barely there. "Liam, what are we doing?" She stopped coming. No explanation. No text. Just, absence. At first, he told himself it was temporary, that she needed space, that maybe she'd gone away for a few days. The barista asked once, casually, "Hey, where's your coffee friend?" He just shrugged. "Busy, I guess." But each morning, the fern by the window wilted a little more, and her seat stayed empty. He tried to work through it, late shifts, early mornings, anything to keep from checking the cafe door every time it opened. But it became a reflex, like breathing. Then, one evening, as he was leaving, he saw her. Across the street. She was walking with someone, a young woman, maybe 20. They looked alike around the eyes. Her daughter, probably. He hadn't known she had one. She laughed, really laughed, and he felt it in his chest in the strangest way, like someone had knocked the air out of him gently. When their eyes met across the street, she froze. The smile faded, just for a second. She said something to the girl beside her and turned away. He didn't call out. Didn't cross. Just watched her disappear into the crowd, like she'd been a dream he accidentally woke from. That night, he drafted a message, "You don't have to explain. I just hope you're okay." He stared at it for a long time, thumb hovering over send. Then he locked the screen instead. The next morning, he went back to the cafe out of habit, not hope, not really. The barista handed him his usual before he even ordered. "Black, no sugar, right?" He almost corrected her, it wasn't his. It was hers. But he didn't. He just nodded. He sat at their table, pretending to read something on his phone, until a man took the seat opposite him. Older. Neat hair, tired eyes, wearing a ring. "Sorry," the man said. "This seat taken?" Liam shook his head. The man gave a faint smile. "My ex-wife used to sit here. Said the light was best in the morning." Liam froze. "She still come around?" the man asked casually. Liam swallowed. "Not lately." "Figures," the man said, with a sigh that sounded almost fond. "She was always running from something. Even when we were fine." He left after that, leaving his cup half full. Outside, the sky was too bright, too clean, the kind of day that refused to match your mood. He walked past the flower shop, the crosswalk, the same street where he'd seen her laugh the night before. He didn't feel heartbroken. He felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. Later, at home, he opened the draft again. Read the message. Deleted it. Typed something else. It was almost closing time when she came back. No warning, just the soft chime of the cafe door, and suddenly there she was again, standing in the same patch of fading light where he'd last seen her months ago. She looked different, not in the way people change, but in the way they stop pretending to stay the same. Her hair was tied back, her clothes simpler. No ring. No scarf. He didn't move at first. Just watched her step up to the counter, order quietly, and scan the room. When their eyes met, something shifted, not relief, not surprise. Something smaller, steadier. She walked over, holding 2 cups. "You still take yours black?" He blinked, then nodded. "Guess I do." They sat in silence for a long while. The cafe was nearly empty, only the hum of the fridge, the rain starting again outside. "I saw you that day," he said finally. "With your daughter." She nodded. "I know. You looked happy." "I was trying to be." The honesty in her tone caught him off guard, not sharp, not defensive, just tired truth. He ran a thumb along the edge of his cup. "Why'd you stop coming?" She hesitated. "Because it started to matter." He almost laughed, but it came out more like an exhale. "You make it sound like that's a bad thing." "It can be," she said softly. "For someone my age. With someone your age." He looked down, trying to hide the small ache that sentence left behind. "You think I care about that?" "I think you should." He smiled faintly. "You always say things that sound like they're for my good. And you never listen." They both laughed, quietly, the kind of laugh that carries history inside it. Then silence again. The kind that presses on the chest. She reached for her cup, then stopped halfway. "He's gone," she said, almost to herself. "The ex?" She nodded. "Moved out. Took the rest of his things last week. He didn't say I'm sorry. It didn't fit. Instead, he said, so now what?" She looked at him, really looked. "Now I try to remember how to be alone without feeling like I failed at something." He met her gaze. "You're not alone right now." Her eyes softened. The air between them shifted, not quite warmth, but not distance either. Just 2 people standing on the edge of something fragile. She reached out, hesitated, then placed her hand over his. Light, unsure, real. He didn't move. Didn't ruin it with words. After a moment, she said quietly, "You'll forget me eventually." "Maybe," he whispered. "But not yet." Her hand stayed there, just long enough to mean something, and then she withdrew, gathering her things, eyes steady, voice calm. "Okay," she said. He nodded once, matching the word. "Okay." A year passed before he realized he'd stopped waiting for her to leave again. They didn't fall into anything dramatic, no sudden declarations, no middle-of-the-night calls. It just happened, the way certain mornings start with light instead of noise. Slowly, quietly, like the world forgot to warn them. He still came to the café every day at 8:47 a.m. out of habit. She joined him most mornings, sometimes late, sometimes not at all. When she wasn't there, she left little traces, a folded napkin, a tea stain shaped like a crescent moon, or a receipt with her handwriting on it. He learned her routines like landmarks, how she preferred tea in the evenings now, how she hummed under her breath when thinking, how she checked her phone less these days, or maybe just for different reasons. She'd taken a part-time job at the art center. He'd finally submitted one of his old designs to a small gallery. Life moved, imperfectly, but forward. They never labeled what they were. They didn't need to. There were no promises, no future tense, just small, present things, his coat draped over her chair, her scarf left on his couch, 2 cups cooling side by side. Sometimes, when they walked home together, she'd stop by the bench near the café. The same one where she'd once told him she didn't know what they were doing. Now, she'd sit, sip her tea, and rest her hand against his. Not intertwined, just touching. Enough to say, "We're here." One evening, as the sky dimmed and traffic softened, she said, "Do you remember that morning? The dress, the text, all of it." He smiled, nodding. "I thought you were getting married." "I was," she said. "Just not to the right person." They sat there for a while, no music, no rain this time. Just 2 people who'd survived themselves long enough to meet halfway. He looked at her, really looked, and thought about how everything he used to call uncertainty had somehow turned into peace. Not excitement. Not perfection. Just, quiet. When they got up to leave, she reached for his hand again, steady now. He squeezed once, like punctuation at the end of a sentence. "I'm glad you didn't stop coming," she said softly. "I almost did. But you didn't." He smiled. "Guess I was waiting for you to finish the story." She tilted her head, amused. "And how does it end?" He thought for a moment. "It doesn't. It just keeps going." They walked on, side by side, her scarf brushing his arm, their reflections passing in the dark glass of the café window. 2 cups still on their table, empty but side by side. Later, he'd think of that moment and realize, it wasn't the text that changed everything. It was the silence after, the part where someone finally stayed.